Tucker just said, Oliver, the crowd was enormous, he says. A small percentage of them were hooligans. They committed vandalism. You've seen their pictures again and again, but the overwhelming majority were not. They were peaceful, orderly, and neat. They were sightseers. I mean, that wasn't the news part of that day. The news part of the day was that there was an insurrection. It was the hundreds of people who caused damage and injury and insurrection. I think he's missing maybe the headline from that day.
Yeah, and how they got in the Capitol by overrunning the Capitol Police. That's a key part of this, obviously. What we saw tonight, Allison, from Tucker is nothing new. He has been trying to sanitize the very real violence that we all saw unfold at the U.S. Capitol in real time for quite some time now.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Tucker Carlson and some of the bombshell revelations that he dropped in regards to the January 6th footage that has been released to him from the Republicans, in which Tucker can tell the real story, or put it this way, the whole story about what happened on January 6th, okay? Not just what you see from the mainstream liberal media, but Tucker is basically telling a fiery but mostly peaceful version of what happened on January 6th. And the mainstream liberal media, in this case right here, we're going to talk about CNN, they are losing their minds, right? They are losing their minds over Tucker Carlson giving his, again, fiery but mostly peaceful version of what happened on January 6th. And I find the meltdowns here for the mainstream liberal media to be hilarious, because some of the revelations from Tucker Carlson that I think were the most important, again, kind of go against the narrative from the left and the Democrats that January 6th was nothing but violence, okay? That you had these crazy rabid Trump supporters that, you know, went and destroyed the Capitol, okay? That's the narrative that they put out there, when that's simply not the case, okay? You have footage of police officers, okay, and officials at the Capitol opening up the door, letting people come into the Capitol peacefully, where they walked around the Capitol. I mean, there's footage of the police quite literally giving the alleged, or the so-called QAnon shaman a tour of the Capitol.
Dangerous conspiracy theorist dressed in outlandish costume who led the violent insurrection to overthrow American democracy. For these crimes, Chansley was sentenced to nearly 4 years in prison, far more time than many violent criminals now receive. What did Jacob Chansley do to receive this punishment? To this day, there is dispute over how Chansley got into the Capitol building. But according to our review of the internal surveillance video, it is very clear what happened once he got inside. Virtually every moment of his time inside the Capitol was caught on tape. The tapes show that Capitol Police never stopped Jacob Chansley. They helped him. They acted as his tour guides. Here's video of Chansley in the Senate chamber. Capitol Police officers take him to multiple entrances and even try to open locked doors for him. We counted at least 9 officers who were within touching distance of unarmed Jacob Chansley. Not one of them even tried to slow him down. Chansley understood that Capitol Police were his allies. Video shows him giving thanks for them in a prayer on the floor of the Senate. Watch.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving the inspiration needed to these police officers to allow us in this building.
Contrast the reality of what Jacob Chansley did in the Capitol building on January 6th.
And then you also have footage of Officer Brian Sicknick, who the Democrats have abused and taken advantage of to try to say that, well, he was killed by Trump supporters, walking around the Capitol doing the riot, basically unscathed, okay, totally fine. In which a few days later, he died from natural causes, but Democrats tried to say that Trump supporters killed him, okay, and they have used that lie, okay, and taken advantage of his death in order to try to smear Trump supporters for political reasons. Now, Tucker Carlson, again, is bringing all this stuff to light, telling the truth about what actually happened that day, or the whole story about whatever happened, what happened that day. But again, the mainstream liberal media is losing their minds over this because their precious narrative is falling apart. So without further ado, I actually want to react to CNN this morning, Don Lemonhead and his two feminist friends, discussion on Tucker Carlson in these new revelations.
Also this morning, we are watching Fox News and how they are getting special access to footage from January 6th. This is something that premiered last night on Tucker Carlson's show. And what appeared to be an attempt to rewrite what happened on January 6th as they revealed a portion of the 40,000 hours of footage that was given to Fox News and only to Fox News by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Tucker Carlson aired a portion of the video talking about what happened that day in what appeared to be an attempt to sanitize it.
Again, what's hilarious about this to me, right, is that they're trying to accuse Tucker Carlson of sanitizing what happened on January 6th. When, again, these are the people that try their best to sanitize the BLM/Antifa riots. Again, fiery but peaceful, okay, was a cry on CNN where they said that, hey, this is fiery but mostly peaceful in what clearly is not a mostly peaceful riot. They tried their best to sanitize it. Not just with that, but they also tried their best to sanitize the Roe v. Wade riots and any type of left-wing extremism. They try their best to sanitize it, but now all of a sudden they're mad because Tucker Carlson is trying to sanitize what happened on January 6th. Actually, what he's really doing is just telling the whole story, right? He's telling a part of the story that the mainstream liberal media doesn't want told, right? That's the issue here.
The crowd was enormous. A small percentage of them were hooligans. They committed vandalism. You've seen their pictures again and again. But the overwhelming majority weren't. They were peaceful. They were orderly and meek. These were not insurrectionists. They were sightseers. Footage from inside the Capitol overturns the story you've heard about January 6th. Protesters queue up in neat little lines. They give each other tours outside the Speaker's office. They take cheerful selfies and they smile. They're not destroying the Capitol. They obviously revere the Capitol.
Of course, many of the people that you see in these videos here, as Poppy was just referencing, and as we've covered here at CNN, were actually charged with crimes for what happened on January 6th. 326 people were charged with assaulting, resisting, or impeding officers or employees. The Justice Department says 140 officers were assaulted that day at the Capitol. Some left with head wounds, cracked ribs, smashed spinal discs, and burns. Joining us now to talk about this is CNN media analyst and Axios media reporter Sarah Fisher.
You see, here's the thing. I love how they try to respond to Tucker Carlson's alleged sanitation or one-sided reporting of what happened on January 6th with their own one-sided reporting on it, right? Because for them, what happened on January 6th was nothing but violence, right? Everybody that went in that Capitol was a violent Trump supporter trying to destroy the place, okay? They don't want to tell the side of the story where you have people who just peacefully walked into the Capitol, who were basically let in, who got charged and are facing, criminal penalties, right? Because they simply just walked into the place. They ain't destroy anything. They ain't doing anything. They were just there, right? But CNN doesn't want to tell that side of the story because, again, that would make it so people would have sympathy for those people to say, hey, maybe a lot of these people shouldn't actually be locked up or they shouldn't be charged. They shouldn't be facing these type of criminal penalties for something that really wasn't that serious. At least it wasn't as serious as what a lot of these people did during the BLM riots. But again, it's just funny how that works. They're mad at Tucker Carlson telling just one side of it, but yet they only just want to tell one side of it. It's just hilarious.
We knew this was coming. We knew that he had gotten access to this, and you've seen Kevin McCarthy say that he is trying to widely disseminate more of it, but so far they've only given it to one outlet.
Yeah, he says it was an exclusive to Fox News. But the problem, Caitlin, is that an exclusive is done so that you can set the tone of a story. Once you give it to other outlets, of course, CNN, Axios, others are going to try to analyze it the best that they can, and their analysis will definitely look different. But now a narrative has been set. Don just was holding up a New York Post that shows the tour de farce. This is an example of when you give an exclusive, how the narrative is set for the next day and the next coming days. And remember... Yeah,
so this is what they're concerned about, right? They're not concerned about the truth. They're concerned about the narrative. Oh, my God, Tucker Carlson's changing the narrative. Oh, my God, our impressionist narrative is falling apart because Tucker is saying that January 6th was fiery but mostly peaceful. Again, the same thing they did with the BLM riots. Amazing. This is why this is so hilarious to me. And this is why I have to respond to the mainstream liberal media when they do this. Is because I have to call out just the sheer hypocrisy of how they cover this stuff, right? They're mad at Tucker for doing the exact same thing that they did with the BLM riots. It's amazing. It's amazing. Like, this is, again, Tucker Carlson's version of fiery but mostly peaceful. And they can't handle it. They can't stand it.
Tucker Carlson said he's going to release more footage tonight, so it's not like we're going to get that access immediately.
Go. No. Go. You've been talking about this all morning.
I've been talking about it for not just all morning, but I mean, this is, again, the danger of when Kevin McCarthy, and this also relationship that we're talking about with Fox News. Look at the situation that they're in now with Dominion. But then this is the danger of not fairness, unfairness. You should give it to every news organization at the same time so that they're able to, as you say, analyze it in real time, and not one, particularly, especially someone who is not considered to be a journalist, to be able to disseminate it and give his take on it.
I mean, my take on it is if Kevin McCarthy thought that there was something really problematic in the way that the media writ large covered January 6th and that these tapes disproved it, you'd give it to your colleagues in Congress and you'd let them run an investigation on it. You wouldn't do an exclusive leak. But let's take a 30,000-foot view.
Okay, but where was all this when the Democrats chose not to show a lot of this footage? They chose to hide a lot of this footage. Where's the outrage over the fact that all of this stuff wasn't discussed during the January 6th hearings? Again, it's amazing. They're upset with Tucker Carlson for alleged one-sided coverage, but yet they weren't upset with the Democrats and the January 6th commission for hiding these tapes in the first place. If the Democrats had been transparent and had showed the whole narrative, okay, and showed everything, showed all the tapes, then this wouldn't be necessary, right? Tucker Carlson wouldn't have any type of angle on this. There would be no footage to show if they actually really was fair and balanced about this from the start. Why are you not upset with the fact that there were nothing but partisan hacks on the January 6th commission in the first place? Everybody on the January 6th commission was either a Democrat who hates Trump or a Republican that hates Trump. Again, one-sidedness is only bad. It's only a problem when it's done by Fox News, right? It's not a problem when it's done by them. When it's done by them, it's journalism, right? When it's done by Fox News, it's propaganda.
I cover media, I cover tech. This is becoming a bigger trend. You have Elon Musk handpicking journalists that he's going to do these big doc dumps with so that they can set a narrative around what's happening there. You have Kevin McCarthy doing the same thing at Fox. This is how you create this shock and awe factor so that you can recreate the narratives that you want. It's the new tactic for people in power. So don't expect this to go away. Moving forward, expect a lot of people in power to pick their favorite outlets and journalists and do these leaks.
I just keep coming back to the people who died. And let's take Officer Brian Sicknick, for example. Tucker Carlson addressed him on the show last night. Let's play that and then hear from Sicknick's family. Here was Tucker.
Here is surveillance footage of Sicknick walking in the Capitol after he was supposedly murdered by the mob outside. By all appearances, Sicknick is healthy and vigorous. He's wearing a helmet, so it's hard to imagine he was killed by a head injury. Whatever happened to Brian Sicknick was very obviously not the result of violence he suffered at the entrance to the Capitol. This tape overturns the single most powerful and politically useful lie the Democrats have told us about January 6th.
So for the Sicknick's family and on their part, they say doing things like that, it says organizations like Fox rip our wounds wide open. And just looking back at what the medical examiner said, although they said, yes, he died of natural causes, the medical examiner went on to say, quote, all that transpired, meaning on January 6th, the day before he died, quote, played a role in his condition.
Again, I'm not trying to, I'm laughing at CNN. Okay, and how they're framing this. The point of what Tucker Carlson was saying was that the guy clearly did not die from being murdered by the January 6th protesters, which is what the mainstream liberal media said happened, right? I mean, there are people that legitimately think that January 6th protesters killed and murdered police officers when that's not true, right? The guy was walking around. He was good. He wasn't murdered. He died of natural causes, which she admits, okay? And she throws that part in there. Well, the coroner said that, well, January 6th had something to do with it. Well, I mean, that, do we really know that? right? Do we really know that? Or is that just something they're throwing in there as a bone to the Democrats, right? Because it seems to me whether or not January 6th happened that day, his days were probably numbered. I mean, if it was that fragile, right? If he was in that fragile of a state from a physical or from a health perspective, his days were probably numbered anyways. So to sit here and say that he was murdered, which is what the mainstream liberal media said, it's just nonsense. And this idea that he died because of what happened on January 6th is also nonsense. Doesn't make sense. He was walking around just fine. He was fine. But again, these people are upset because their narrative is falling apart. It's falling apart. Tucker Carlson is literally destroying everything they worked so hard for the last 2 to 3 years to build up. All the propaganda that they built up, okay, all the lies they told is all falling apart. And this is what they're upset about. They can't stand it.
These are real people who died.
Yeah, and trying to sanitize that day is trying to sanitize the deaths of all of the people that occurred that day and all.
Yeah, just like y'all try to sanitize the deaths of all the people that died during the BLM riots, which, by the way, were a lot more than the people that died on January 6th or that were murdered on January 6th, which is only one person, Ashley Babbitt. Amazing.
All the people who maybe they didn't die, but they've suffered a lot of mental illness. They suffered a lot in the following. Think about.
I wish they felt this way about all the people that lost their businesses, that, had their neighborhoods destroyed, that suffered emotional and physical trauma from the BLM riots. I wish they had this same type of sympathy. I really do. Right? I really do. It's amazing how they only have sympathy when the act is committed by Trump supporters, but when acts of violence are committed by the left, the sympathy goes out the window. They don't give a damn about the victims and how they feel. They don't give a damn. I wish they had sympathy for the Supreme Court that was being harassed and constantly under attack from the Roe v. Wade rioters. I wish they had that type of sympathy for them.
About the Capitol police officers, the Capitol Hill staff members, people even from Kevin McCarthy's own staff who were inside that building. It's tragic to watch this play out, and I hope that those tapes get released more broadly so that the media can cover what really happened.
Yeah, so we can spin it right back in our favor, right? I hope that everybody or the liberal media gets access to the tape so we can take back control of the narrative.
Factually moving forward.
Also, I think it's worth pointing out that when you see what they're talking about, what you see on the footage of how the Capitol police officers are acting that day, is that a lot of them testified they felt like they couldn't really engage in a certain way with the rioters because they were outnumbered. They were so greatly outnumbered that they were worried about escalating it. So when they try to say, oh, well, they're just walking them through, they're doing this, that was actually their testimony. We'll see what footage.
Can I just read this, please? I'm sorry. Every time the pain of that day seems to have ebbed a bit, organizations like Fox rip our wounds wide open again, and we are frankly sick of it. That's from the Sicknick.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I feel bad for him. But, to me, I don't understand why you're not as upset about the Democrats using his death for political purposes, because they didn't give a damn about police officers before that. In fact, they spent most of their time demonizing police, right? They hated police before January 6th. After January 6th, all of a sudden they love police. So again, I just find it hilarious how CNN is so upset about Tucker Carlson rewriting or reconstructing or changing the narrative around what happened that day. When they spent time literally sanitizing what happened during the BLM riots and the Roe v. Wade riots. And then they're mad at Tucker Carlson doing the same thing for January 6th. Absolutely incredible, right? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.